older
You
that I
realize
understood the
never seen
difference.
this.
I was like,
She's
it's all kind of political
Well,
thing going on.
I went to a party somewhere,
There was one
Nobody.
time in Iraq.
and they're like, "Oh, orange and green."
In
I've never
Iraq?
seen that before. I said, "I'm an equal party." I said, "I'm a Protestant. My parents are Catholic. I'm not picking sides.
Yeah.
I'm representing everybody."
Right, don't blame you.
But I mean, the streets were
Women,
just
who made you
bare.
sides for you?
I've thought the same thing wherever
Oh,
I've
you
driven,
went,
it's
okay.
been just desolate, frankly. I think people really are staying in and taking
Well,
cover
they-
and.
I got them all
resting
out.
and-
It's like, that's the
Were they just
question.
arrested or
Do
put
I
a
leave
guy
them
in
up
their
for
house
3
arrested in
months?
Kentucky for not
Leave
self-quarantining.
them, unless
know,
somebody
He was
challenges
positive,
it. I'm not
somebody
picking
says
it up.
to-
positive for
Well,
corona, he would
you
not.
would
Some
have
of
to
the-
check with
What?
The ordinance, yes, city ordinance
Say,
Well-
'cause a lot of them say like 30 days before.
for the election, right?
And I said,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Well,
Well,
see,
and I've got,
Was he
The
president?
18th
I
district.
only caught a little
Mhm.
bit
You know how
of
many
it.
Part that I
ordinances I
heard,
gotta
he was
check?
He has
Right.
tested
But see, here's
positive.
the
I wish the
and
cities would
refused
just
to
come out and say,
quarantine, and that's why
go
they
ahead and leave your signs
arrested
up, or
him.
please pull your signs until
but
this
he was
kid.
Kate
going
never
out
really
and
played
spreading the
comply
joy.
with that 30-day.
Yeah, they have a
He
30 day,
didn't-
but
he
they.
didn't
Oh, they
resist
don't
the
enforce
pressure.
it.
Well, because what they say
And the
is,
risk isn't
it's your
necessarily-
private property.
Right.
So you
So you
can't
can
have it
do
in a
whatever you
throughway, but you can have it on private,
What about the
and
person that
whatever.
picks up that virus and takes it home
I
to
don't
their
know.
sick child or sick
Exactly.
mother?
All I know is
Right.
yesterday
Okay.
afternoon, I
We
stopped
talked-
putting them out.
Okay, it is 8:30, well,
I have like 20 left.
I think our first order of business is to recess our meeting from March.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make,
Do we need to read?
I'll make the motion that we,
Yes.
Yeah, we need a
Right.
roll call first and then
Right, that's
let's
it.
recess
Okay,
our
yeah.
meeting from last week.
Miss Smith,
Yes.
Miss Nelson,
yes,
Miss Daniel,
Yes.
Miss Cross.
Yes, I'm here.
and I will make a motion that we resume our meeting from March, whatever the date was, March 14th.
Do you want to resume
second.
it or recess it?
Recess
Well,
it.
Well,
Well,
No, I think
or
we
are we
adjourn
already
it.
in recess?
I mean, do you want to
You would adjourn it, yeah, let's
And then
adjourn
start a
it.
meeting for,
we have to restart it before we
Yeah,
can
before
stop
we
it.
can stop it.
So we'll resume our meeting
Yeah.
on the 14th.
okay.
I make that motion. Second.
Okay.
Go from there.
That's what I said, resume.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Roll call.
Miss Smith,
Yes.
Miss Nelson.
Yes.
Miss Daniels.
Yes.
Miss Cross.
Yes,
Okay, would
Now-
anybody like to recess that meeting?
yes.
I'll make the motion to recess that meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Miss Smith,
Yes.
Or
Miss
adjourn.
Nelson,
Yes.
Yeah,
Adjourn would
proper.
be the proper.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, adjourn should
Yeah,
be.
yeah, it should be
Okay, so,
adjourned.
but, yeah, and
Strike,
then,
strike that button, adjourn.
yes, I will take care of it.
We're all tired and punchy.
Yeah.
So you want me to start the roll call over?
Yes.
All right. Miss Smith,
Yes.
Miss Nelson.
Yes.
Miss Daniels.
Yes.
Miss Cross.
yes.
Okay, we're here for March 17th. Roll call for that meeting, please.
Miss Smith,
Here.
Miss Nelson,
Yep.
Miss Daniel.
Yes.
Miss Cross.
Yes.
I know that our meeting was to begin at 6:30 this evening. I believe a notice has gone to news places that this was a meeting, an emergency meeting, considering the issues that have been going on the last 24 hours. So that notice did happen.
It has been posted as it is normally posted.
So we are in session for March 17th, and we have an agenda, and, oh, sorry,
Oh, yeah.
That's a different ring.
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
I haven't heard that one before.
Okay. Oh, please stop. Okay.
You're just buzzing and ringing all over the place.
That's to keep me awake. Okay. Where today? What are we talking about today? We have well, you have an agenda that says primary election next steps.
Yes,
Yes.
we wanted to kind of fill you in on what occurred last night,
Okay.
leading up to today and where we stand today at this point, knowing that it could be very fluid depending on what is happening litigation-wise or otherwise, potentially. Yesterday at about 3 o'clock, the governor, secretary of state, and the director of health held a press conference that alluded to the fact that it was their best advice that we postpone the election at that point, and they did mention the date of June 2nd. During that press conference, they did state that there was a court action taking place. There had been something filed in the Court of Common Pleas,
They just said it was filed in court,
Right.
they weren't specific.
Yeah, I mean, but we found out after it was Common Pleas.
In Franklin County, yeah.
Yes, in Franklin County. And at that time, because of the way that it was delivered, many people took the part of the election was canceled and didn't hear the last part where the judge had not ruled on it at that point. So there was confusion about that cancellation. Our office took the stance that until we had an official directive or a signed and dated court order, that we would continue business as normal with the election and prepare and continue to fill poll worker holes. We continued through doing that process. Then we started hearing the rumors of other litigation potentially being filed, and again, we considered it all rumors until we heard something otherwise. We did have our election official recruiters still continue recruiting. We were getting, frankly, numerous call-offs throughout the day. We had been receiving them all throughout the weekend. We do want to commend them. They did a phenomenal job, honestly. And honestly, the citizens of Portage County for stepping up and trying to help us in any way that they could. People were very kind and understanding, so we do appreciate that. At about 8 o'clock last night, we started.
I don't know what you're gonna say, so.
Yeah, well, we let most
Oh,
of the
yeah,
staff head home.
Yes.
Just because we were at the place where we were ready, other than finishing up election official assignments for the election to take place today. We had all of our trucks, all of our deliveries that were in place. Our equipment was in place. We were ready for today's activities of rovers going out and manning the polls. At about 10 o'clock, Terry and I made a phone call. We actually had a few phone calls with the SOS throughout the day, just getting some clarification. Around 10 o'clock we called because that's when we started hearing rumors that the department, the director of health was potentially calling off the election due to the coronavirus. When we called, the attorney that we spoke to could not say that that was happening. He had not received official clarification on that himself. So at that time, we decided that there wasn't a lot more we could do here until we knew for certain, because as we left the building at about 10 o'clock, we said the election is on. Our election official recruiters left with us. They continued recruiting throughout the night, placing calls and messages for the few holes. And I do want to say they had just a few holes, around a handful, that they were still placing at that time, which I think is extraordinary considering the number of call-offs we've had throughout this election process. It wasn't long that we were home, and I got a call from Denise, and we started seeing the directives and other information coming in. And before you all have a copy of the directive that we received, which is based on the order from the Director of Health, Dr. Amy Acton, that the polls would be closed today for the primary election, and that the election would be suspended until June 2nd. At that time, Terry and I started just having discussions because we knew that we had to make postings and get information out, so we started our game planning. Last night our website was posted, our social media was posted, all of our election officials that we had information for in the WIN system received notifications that that the election was suspended, so that they would hopefully know not to go to their polling locations.
Yeah.
First thing.
In addition to that, we also notified all of the building, our emergency contacts at the buildings that we were planning on using, as well as our rovers. And
staff and
you all should
y'all.
have gotten a
Yes.
text message.
Yeah, we got it too.
Okay. And then this morning we came in and we put these postings together. These are all on doors of all of our polling locations to let the voters know, and I can pass it around. You can see the text, basically that the election was suspended, and that we, based on the directive that we have received, individuals who are wishing to vote can continue to vote in this election, but all voting is to be handled by mail. There is no in-person voting hours. Individuals will need to request their absentee ballot by mail. We will send that ballot out to them. The only time there will be any in-person per se voting as at the polls on June the 2nd at this point, based upon the directive. So we did take care of all those postings and everything. And so that brings us to where we are today. We came in the office bright and early and started making another round of phone calls to all of our VLMs to make sure that they knew that there was not an election, and to ask them if they could please call their workers that they had numbers for to remind them again that there was no election. And then we set up the return of supplies, which you may have saw. Our VLMs are all returning their supplies. We asked that they return those by 4:30 p.m. And if they had any difficulties, to let us know, and we would make arrangements for pickup or whatever we needed to do to get supplies back. We have a couple of teams out currently in polling locations that we have that are readily accessible to us, and locations that we had already scheduled for pickups this evening. We are picking up all of our equipment from those locations today. Any other locations we're sticking to and kind of moving our schedule for our normally scheduled pickup on Wednesday of all of that equipment from those locations.
The normal deadline for absentee is postmarked today or postmarked?
Yesterday.
Yesterday for a postmark, yes.
For the absentees or anything you're getting beyond that then, are those being sequestered?
They are gonna have to be separated based upon how the directive is written.
Yeah, because to me, it almost looked like we weren't supposed to take anymore, so it was a little, so explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so the way that this directive is written, that we will continue to go ahead and process. And by processing, that means opening envelopes, checking off voters that we've received their ballots thus far. We'll open those up, we separate their envelopes and the ballots, and those ballots then can be ran. They can be ran on our equipment because our equipment does not tabulate until we actually take the stick and put it into our machinery to tabulate. Two separate pieces of equipment for processing and tabulation. So what the directive is telling us is that we are required to process any non-UOCAV absentee ballots postmarked by March 16th and received by our office through March 27th, which is that normal 10-day period. Also the same for our UOCAV ballots as well, and that those ballots must be processed, and then that way they are ready. Those will be then sequestered separate from these ballots, which we're going to be doing some marking, whether it be highlighting. Terry and I need to talk through the logistics of that, because we're starting to get those requests for the absentee ballots for continuing voting, so that we can keep these separate, because when you read on into the directive, it then goes into the new dates of postmarking and deadlines for when we must receive those ballots. And we're going to assume at a later date, because they did not tell us when we can start processing those. Usually it's 19 days prior to the election that we can process ballots. There was no mention of that at this point, so they will sit unprocessed. They'll be checked in, they'll be ledgered, they'll be reviewed in that aspect. No voters will be notified if there's any information missing, sent their 11S's, which is normal protocol for us. But we have not received any instruction to process, so that's where some of that sequestering will take place.
So those actual ballots will be in a separate bin from the ones that.
That is correct. They will be
received.
kept
Okay.
separate. And I think, they're just kind of looking at all different angles here at this
Well,
point to
because
make sure we can keep a clear count of what
What
was
is
for March
that-
17th and what was for the extended period.
Because there are still lawsuits and
Oh,
this
yeah.
is
Many
still, this
possibilities.
is still
There's
just
going to be
fluid.
more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's
This
going to be more.
So this post-election cure period,
Yes.
did we
Yes.
always have those 7 days?
Well-
I didn't think we had Saturday and Sunday.
No, and it depends by election and administration how those cure period days are dictated to us. So we follow what is instructed to us. We were going to have the cure period for this election, so tomorrow would have started that cure period. And the cure period hours that we would have had for March 17th, these are the same ones
Okay,
that
so
were
this was
instructed
what
to us.
Yeah.
So they've just moved them
Moved it
now
to-
for that June period. This is the period where individuals who vote the provisional ballots have that opportunity to come to our offices and provide information that they weren't able to provide at the polls should there be missing information.
Right.
So that's what that cure period is for. And that is something that it's based on administration and how that is handled.
And again, you're not processing the ones received, I'll call it late, for lack of a better word. You're not processing them through any machines or computers at this point.
Well, the scanner is considered a machine or a computer because
Okay.
it can scan. So yes, but that's a processor. It's not a tabulator. What the difference is when you look in our, and y'all are familiar with the 850 is what processes the ballots. And it saves the information on a stick, but until you take that stick and put it into our electionware system, that's when the tabulation occurs. That is what we are prohibited from doing. We cannot put those sticks in and tabulate.
Okay.
So in other words, we are not able to be privy to any results because our 850, all it does is tell us this many ballots were affiliated to this polling location. It doesn't tell us Democrats, Republicans, or otherwise. It just says 10 ballots for Ravenna 1A, 20 ballots for Ravenna 1B. It gives us no election results.
Okay.
And that's what we can do, but that's where it stops.
And the tabulating machine there?
It's just the computer that's sitting
Okay.
on the desk back
Okay,
there.
okay.
The one that on
So it's-
election night I put all the
Okay.
USBs
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
Do they have a name?
It's electionware is what
Yeah,
that
that's it. I thought it
program
was
is.
electionware, right.
Mhm.
Let's make the distinction.
If you're done. I also participated in a webinar, which was really just listen only, at 6 o'clock yesterday, where things were different of what they were doing, but the goal of getting any court decision yesterday was that the absentee voting would only continue through May, and then be processed and tabulated in June. The June date was picked because information needed to get to the respective national conventions by a certain date, so that was the only thing that was being considered when the court was reviewing the temporary restraining order and so forth. Obviously, this directive, the current director has gone beyond that. But whether or not this will be final depends on the number of lawsuits that may be filed.
In the
because-
legislature, they can jump in.
Yeah, they
Right,
can
no,
jump in.
they need to jump in.
Yeah, they should have jumped in, but
Yeah.
anyhow. In that webinar, again, some of the questions that were asked and are not addressed to this was to other deadlines. For example, the deadline to file independent ballots or independent candidacies is not extended under any terms. That was just the day before yesterday, and it's done. So
Right.
no one else can file
That's
those.
how it went.
We cannot accept any of those if someone tries.
Unless something changes.
And, well, yeah, and there's
Oh, and I'd be
there's a.
Mine would be
Yeah.
shocked because
Yeah.
that's codified separate.
Right,
That
yeah,
is a
that's
separate
I don't think that's
codification.
going to be, changed at all. The other is that, questions were asked about what should people do, especially local candidates, about signs they already have up. My recommendation to individuals is, under free speech, you can have whatever sign you want in your front or yard,
Right.
but if you have signs at a business or some
Yeah.
other location, you better I would pick them up if it were me. So that's the information I was giving to candidates that I talked to. So I don't know, as we all talk to various people, I think that's a good idea.
Well, we mentioned their city ordinances, so
Right.
they certainly should check with, if it's in a throughway, public space.
Oh, yes.
Private property is different.
It's different, but yeah, if it's anywhere but private property, and that private property owner doesn't want you to pick it up, because they may very well call,
Right,
you know, and say, come get my sign.
right.
But those were the things were being discussed then. Obviously, this current directive doesn't address those. I don't think those issues are going to change at all. But,
Brave new world.
well,
You got that.
I always wondered what chaos looked like. I'm sorry to see it for a
But we
while.
got it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Um,
The only other webinar there was last night at 11:45, and I listened to that a little bit, but I think that was mostly people venting
Yeah.
because they were upset about how things worked. And I don't think it was with anybody's control. It started happening, it snowballed, and it is
People
what it
just
is.
want-
So
right.
Now
I
it's how we
commend the
handle it
staff.
back.
I
Yes,
commend- Your staff and you
Amazing.
two is amazing. I mean, when
Yeah,
I walked in
we have
this
to commend-
weekend and
We
yesterday,
have to commend them.
they're
Yeah.
cheerful,
We
every
should all
phone
get up and
call.
go out there and give them a
Yeah.
round of applause.
Yeah,
They
they were
would-
polite on every
Yeah.
phone call
Yeah,
I could
we
hear. They were just
And they got a dozen
wonderful.
and a half donuts too.
And they don't, they
They'll have a
didn't
sugar
feel
fit.
like they wanted to be. They were all
Go
they
ahead
were
and
all
donuts.
overwhelmed.
Yes, it was, it's been stressful. And,
Well, and times every county in the state, I'm sure.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure
Oh, yeah.
we weren't the only ones that
No.
were pulling our hair
Summit
out.
County, they.
Well, yeah, a lot of
Cuyahoga
counties
County.
had already canceled everything. I know I
And
was
dropped
getting
their stuff.
pushback by people I talked to. You can't do that, you don't have the court order in your hand. It's like, I know that above anybody. I get it, it isn't
Right.
real until you get the court order in your hand. But it ain't gonna happen. Yeah,
I
it
don't
just sat
understand.
there and it was too much.
I don't understand why
One county
there
could-
wasn't, you know, when this started to snowball and it started showing up on the news stations, why didn't someone at the state level say, wait, you know, and put out a press release saying, you know, we're waiting for X, Y, and Z.
And I think part of that is because they, at the state level, weren't agreeing on what to
Yes.
do.
That's it.
Oh,
They weren't agreeing. You could tell by their body language, you could tell
That's
by
right.
things they were saying and wording of different, their own postings. They weren't agreeing.
Mm-mm.
I think that's.
because that led, I mean, if it hadn't
to
been
more
on the news
confusion.
media, it wouldn't have been nearly as chaotic. But you're hearing it, that they are, then you're hearing that maybe not, then you're hearing, oh, yes, it's been canceled. You know, so poor people sitting at home.
I think our Secretary of State was almost, I got the feeling blindsided by the phone calls he got yesterday morning of, no, we have to suspend this. And it was like, well, yesterday it was fine.
Yeah.
Tell me
What
what
happened?
happened.
well, and we've been
And-
rallying the troops for 5 days.
Yeah, and
Right.
nobody
And
could
then-
tell them what the
And then all of a
difference
sudden,
was.
yeah, right.
And we had tremendous outpouring of support. You
Yeah.
know, when we last met, it was, we have 6 people, we're having this special training. And you had, what, 40 people trained or something yesterday?
Well,
I
we
mean,
had probably
60, 70.
yeah, I mean,
people trained.
so we went from 60 to 6 to
Mhm.
65, 70.
That was
That's a
amazing.
huge outpouring of support to
Right.
make this
From the
happen.
The schools where he was sending their teachers.
Yeah.
to the-
That's where most of the people,
Yeah,
the
because
additional
I had a friend of
schools.
mine come.
When the 4:30 training began, I just stood in the back at the very beginning thinking you were gonna get, you know, pummeled by questions and anger or something. These people were like, okay, we'll
Yeah.
just do what we
We'll
have to
do
do.
what we
They
have
were,
to do.
they were
Yeah.
wonderful. I mean,
Yes.
they
Would
were
it be
just,
appropriate to put a thank you in the paper to
Oh, yeah.
everybody?
yeah.
Absolutely, and I
I
would
understand.
highly encourage the board to consider doing that.
I would like to
Right.
do that.
Not only just the election officials, but the community as a whole.
Yes.
People have been understanding and patient for
Under
the
this-
most part, considering very difficult
I grabbed
times.
something
And
and I circulated, and if you're
That would
okay
be-
with
that
it.
would be nice.
And I'll put our-
Because not, I mean, not
Yeah.
only,
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
our poll workers,
yeah, fabulous.
oh my God, they're fabulous.
They were
we
just-
had election officials that frankly had extreme health conditions that were apologizing to us for canceling.
Yes.
And I mean, they're just such
Yeah,
a
they were
dedicated
just-
group that they will bend over backwards for us, and they don't, it's a civic duty, and we
Voters,
cannot
yeah.
even express our appreciation
Yeah.
to them.
Yes.
And sometimes that's frustrating, because thank yous just don't
Yeah.
go
Yeah, we
far
need to
enough,
do
and these
something.
individuals deserve so much gratitude for stepping up and for sticking with us and being patient and kind, and still, even this morning as we're making phone calls, they're like, how are y'all doing? Are you okay?
Good.
If there's something we can do, you tell us, we'll be there for you.
Yeah.
And it's just like the American spirit. I mean, they're always there for us. And I don't think people realize how good our election officials are
And let me,
and how much they do for our community.
And they always have been.
Look,
They
I'm gonna share
always-
something with you.
I'm going back.
Let me share something with you. One of your VL, you know what I'm trying to say, voter, what's it called, man?
VLM.
Yeah, I don't know, my brain ain't working.
Whatever they're
That's
called.
good.
Was put in a precarious predicament, was told by their employer, because they were gonna work, okay, that if you come in, your job is on the line. Like,
You come in as a poll worker?
if you come in because of this, the coronavirus and the strain on the workforce there, if you come in, your job is on the line. So rather than not work, she told them she would take vacation time so that she could come and work the polls.
But the
So
employer
this
was
is kind-
thinking, if you're good enough to come to, go to the polls, you're good enough to come to work. That's, wow.
Well, you would think, yeah. So this is the kind of dedication we got of workers. Because
Yeah.
the lady called me and said, Dory, what should I do? I said, you know, your job is on the line. She said, but I cannot let my people down. I said, use your own judgment and use your own heart conscience. And so that's what she did. She had to negotiate with their attorney and the HR person so that she could take, matter of fact, they told her you just take 2 weeks off. So, yeah. So I'm gonna just share that with you. That's the kind of dedication we got of our people.
Well, when you consider that they're saying anyone over the age of 65 should not even be out and about.
Right.
Well, then,
And when you
that's
consider,
okay.
And consider this real, no.
that's half the board. You know, and if you take into account the average age of our poll workers,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
if they would have listened to that,
They wouldn't even show up.
we would have been in serious trouble. And
Yeah.
they put themselves on the line.
Yeah, they did.
For this election,
That's
and I'm just
dedication.
blown away,
And,
just totally blown away.
considering this environment. But yes, I would, do you want us to say, make a motion to,
To
to-
put
Oh, yes,
something
put a
in the
thing
paper.
on
To put
Thank you,
something in
paper.
writing
Yes,
that
I'll-
I'm clear with each of you.
You make the motion,
before.
I'll
I'll make the motion that our director, not, oh, God, forgive me, our chair draft a letter that we can all sign and put, give the deputy and the director to put, the authority to put in a paper.
I will second that.
Or they can just use
And-
their signatures,
Yeah, with our
so
signature,
they don't have to come in and sign.
the electronic
Yeah.
signatures.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson.
Yes.
Ms. Daniels.
Yes.
Ms. Cross.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll do that this afternoon if that's okay.
No, it's good. So, our next meeting date is normally a post-election kind of thing. Where are we, you know, I know we're probably gonna have to meet again because of whatever flushes out in the legislature or the courts, but should we?
Yeah,
And we have to meet on that, the next meeting date, because that's the day that we picked for the sheriff qualification.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right,
that's
okay.
Yeah.
so
So
the third is for sure.
Okay.
April 3rd.
Okay, I was just curious if there was another date in there that we.
And if it would be okay with the board, I'd like to hold the 7th until we get a little more information and
Yeah.
find out
Sure.
where we
That's
are at
fine.
this
You like to
point.
reserve the 7th for this?
I do
Right,
wanna
we
still
already
keep the
had it.
7th,
It's
it's
on
already
the, it's on
on.
the calendar.
Yeah, I know,
We're
the
just gonna
3rd, 7th, and 14th.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, the 3rd, the 7th, and the 14th.
I
of
would
April.
like to just keep those on the schedules,
Uh-huh.
and if we need, and if we're able to cancel or do things, then let's do that as we get a little bit
Sure.
more
Or-
information.
If
Or if we
something-
have to call another, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if there's something that
Man.
happens before the third, please.
That's good.
We
Yeah,
can
we
call
love
an
it.
emergency meeting or whatever you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody's going out of town, right?
No,
No.
April's my birthday.
although I
month, so I'll
considered
be here.
driving out, Alabama.
Yeah.
If I may, can we continue through the directive a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah,
Because we
right.
do wanna also
Yeah.
discuss, the timeline for official certification.
Yeah.
Again, we know this is potentially fluid, but Terry and I did go through the calendar this morning, looking at official certifications. We wanna get a couple of dates on your calendars to reserve. And
Sure.
just so as we find out more, that way we know these dates are available. If it is okay with the board members at this time, we are looking at, so, and I wanna look at my calendar because I'm looking, my note has disappeared. There it is, June 26th. We would like to have, that would be our pre-meeting where we discuss provisional ballots, ballot remakes, all of that information. That would be June 26th. That is falling on a Friday.
Yeah.
Actually, we made an error with that. It should be the 25th, the Thursday, 'cause we always have to have that day in between to
So you
run.
want the 25th, which is
June 25th, which is a Thursday,
same time, 8:30.
8:30. If we can reserve that date for the pre-certification meeting, and then Monday, June the 29th for the certification meeting.
Is
Good
it
thing I
June
didn't make that
29th?
reservation.
Monday, yes.
Mm.
Mhm.
And once again, that's 8:30.
That will be 8:30 as well. And again, these are
That's-
reserved dates just
Sure.
until we
And this
find
is
out.
the certification.
Mhm.
In both
Right.
morning times, 8:30.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to bring up an issue with the board regarding, VLM payment. So
Right.
our precinct election officials, our voting location managers get an extra $10 and it's considered a mileage check because they come down on Saturday, pick up the stuff, and then come down, usually election day, at the end of the day and bring their stuff
Stuff
back.
back.
And we provide them, like, it's $10. So we would like to, even though there was an election, we would like to pay them the $10 for this.
Because they did get it
Right.
and
Because
bring
they
it
did
back.
bring it back,
Sure.
and then do it again on June 2nd.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we do that.
And I'll second that we pay the $10 mileage.
Additional.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Cross?
Yes.
And I guess the only other, these are just budgetary.
That's okay.
We're gonna, there's a potential, just so you know, I don't think it requires a motion or anything, but, just so you know, we're probably gonna have to do some additional training.
Yeah.
So, for a couple of reasons. One, the time frame between now and the election is
Too far.
substantial.
Mhm.
And so, potentially offer people who think they want to have a brush up course, come do that. But obviously, there's the opportunity to lose people.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
who could come in March but can't come in June. So we'll have, recruit, we have to make sure we have enough people.
Well, maybe you have some snowbirds that'll come back.
Yeah.
Right, they should be back, so we'll probably be doing additional training and that'll be an additional expense, so.
Do you want a motion now, or do you want to wait and see how things play out?
Just kind of to
Yeah,
let you
just
know
so
where
we're
we
aware.
stand.
They are gonna get
And
paid,
I
right?
do believe,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
They are gonna get paid.
for not
training.
for training and
No,
for
not for
mileage.
training, I'm talking about the folks that, the VLMs and the poll workers that were scheduled to do the polls March 17th, are they getting paid?
They'll get, no.
They did not appear at the polls, so we can't pay them
The
for.
people that retrieve the equipment and so forth, they're getting.
They will
They'll
get
get
paid,
paid.
That's that
but for
$10.
those that.
But the other
and-
folks, they didn't work, so they didn't get, they're not
Yeah,
getting paid.
people that got to roll over and go back to sleep,
Yeah,
no.
we do not have that money in the
No,
budget.
Because we're gonna end up
Yeah,
paying them
that's what I want.
later.
And I
We'll
will.
pay them when they work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will
Get paid
say
when you
that
work.
the County Commissioners Association is aware.
Yeah.
Yesterday, there was an email from their association president saying that they would be, just a letter, we got copied on it, that went to the commissioners saying that they're gonna keep abreast on the situation. And
Mhm.
obviously, I can only assume because their function with us is funding, to where they're under the assumption as
Right.
well that funding now for this year, all of our budgets are probably going to have to expand because
yeah.
of the added election months.
In addition
Basically.
to it being a
Right.
presidential year.
Yes.
Bam,
So
bam.
they are
Yeah,
at least
and-
aware of that concern already.
Okay.
Not that that means much.
Okay.
And then the last thing, campaign finance deadlines, those will be adjusted. We have not received the adjustments exactly, but right now what they are telling us that the post-primary campaign finance deadline will be on July the 10th. That's the only change that they have notified us of. So that is a difference, a new date. That's an extended date to be aware of as well. So right now, those are the changes and things we know today.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're probably gonna do some more fundraising between now and June 2nd.
Well, sure.
I'm sure. A lot more advertising.
Oh my
Right.
gosh, yes.
People can, as of today, request absentee ballots.
Absolutely, they can request absentee ballots. It is by mail. There is no in-office voting of any kind taking place. It will all be done by mail. They will request the ballot in here, of course, like any other time you vote by mail. You have to complete an application.
Right.
We will send them the application as we do any other election when that is requested. They can also download that from our website and the Secretary of State's website. They need to complete that application. The one thing that is always tricky with a primary election is you have to notate that it's a primary election and what ballot style you wish to vote. Once they complete that, they mail it back to us. We have to confirm that all the information matches their registration records and that they have provided us all the requirements by law. At that point, then we can mail their ballots. If there is something deficient upon that application, as always, we send the 11S to correct that deficiency so that we can get a correction and mail the
Can
ballot.
they request online for
No.
this?
No,
they have
there is
to-
no absentee online request.
Okay.
The
So they have
the
to-
application
so
is
online.
online.
The application is online
request
to
is on.
download,
And
print,
print.
and mail.
Yeah.
It must be an original, because we still require that original signature.
So they, can they, is it
Request the
interactive, can they
application.
fill it out, or can they just do
On,
that?
it depends on which application option they choose. There is one that's a complete printable, and then there's one that's a fillable. And that's kind of sometimes the comfort level of the individual.
Yeah, so they print it out, they put the original in an envelope, they mail it to the Board of Elections.
Yeah, at this point, we are strictly a vote by mail election.
Okay.
From this
Okay.
point on, like I said, it was made clear to us that the intention as of right now is in-person voting ended yesterday and would not continue on. The only other form of voting, person to person, will be at the polls on June 2nd.
Okay, and they have to have those applications returned to you? That's just ongoing.
Ongoing.
Well,
Until we have
26th.
the 26th of May is the last day that we will receive them
Postmark day.
with the postmark.
Okay.
And if they're postmarked after the 26th, they would not be accepted for mailing of the ballot.
So you're gonna put all that on the website, on the Facebook page?
We're not sure exactly how because of the space limits. We're working that through. We're working that through.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, we'll
Should-
get it
you
on
think I
our
should
Facebook
include-
pages.
right.
Should I
We'll
include
take-
that in our thank you letter? Should I can include that
Sure.
information?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right,
that you
yeah.
can-
Uh,
you can
any-
request-
Anything that's gonna help them.
An absentee ballot
Yeah.
by
Okay.
mail.
And please, if you do provide information to help them, can you also maybe somehow word it that if they have questions or are hearing, look at our website, call us, don't look at third-party information or
Yes,
other
right.
information
Don't take
that could
Facebook as
unfortunately be incorrect. Come to the direct source,
Come-
whether it be
right.
our office or the Secretary of State. Don't go to another source that may be hearing something and hearing it incorrectly.
Which is part of what happened yesterday.
That's exactly what
Oh,
happened
yeah.
yesterday.
Well, and we also had that happen with early voting. I
Yes.
saw several postings on Facebook that indicated we did not have early voting on Sunday and Monday, which I
Yeah.
corrected,
Yeah.
but,
Okay. Well, I'll draft something up this afternoon and run it by you.
You wanna, sure,
Make sure I'm correct on dates and then I'll
good.
circulate, okay.
So also in the directive, I do apologize.
No, no.
We're interrupting you.
Today, we are required to remain open until 7:30 PM because we still have those absentee ballots that people were already planning to return in person in our little ballot drop box that's in the vestibule area. So what we have decided, based on staffing needs and funds, that Terry and I will be the two individuals that will
Okay.
stay past 4:30, from that 4:30 to 7:30 slot for that. The rest of the staff, we will release at 4:30 unless you have concerns with that. And I will be calling, I actually was gonna try and call Gary Smith, who is the captain with the
Sure.
sheriff's office that I work with staffing. He's already told me whatever we need, he'll make sure it happens. But I will have to hire in a sheriff for this evening for those
Sure.
extended
Yeah.
hours, cause we had canceled because normally we have two individuals. We had canceled temporarily until we knew where we were going. So I'll call and let Gary know that information.
So there is a box outside that can develop?
No, it's in our office, which is why we need access
Right.
to the board
Okay.
office because we don't
Okay.
have a secured outside box and
Mhm.
we are required to be open until 7:30.
Okay.
But at least we're not sitting
No.
outside in the mist.
Could just, this,
What
It's
about
off.
that?
the subject a little bit. Whatever happened, I know what happened, never mind. I was gonna say, what had happened to our plans to actually put an outside entrance so that we could? Yeah, I know the answer, never mind.
That was all, to our knowledge, that was completely tabled and by the commissioners, and there has been no
Talking about
further
that.
discussions
You mean like
on
a
renovations.
permanent?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, we have requested
You know,
and
the
have gone
street-
through
Oh, we
many
have architectural plans and
Yeah,
plans
plans.
off. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, but it's
to make a
Blah, blah, blah.
separate
Yeah.
voter entrance to our office separate from the building, so when we have extended hours versus the building, it's not disruptive, nor do we
Right.
have to hire in,
Yeah,
but that has been tabled
okay.
to our knowledge.
Anything else?
We need a capital improvement, just build a new building.
We have a member of the public here, Brian. Is there any questions or anything
They
you
won't
wanted
let that
to?
happen either.
All I can say is that this is not gonna end up anywhere where we imagine it to be now, so.
Right.
We need to keep our wits about us and
You
a
got
sense of
that.
humor.
Yeah. Yes, it's all fluid.
very, it's liquid.
Remember in
I want to be a solid, I do not want to
Remember in
At least
science
you're not
class, when you used to
supple-
get to play with the mercury and you try to like contain it?
be. You are over, no.
Well, you're
That's
identifying
like
who's
other
in the
people.
virus.
Does
or-
that not
mercury.
explain the mental capacity of some of us? Play with mercury as children.
Faith, Terry, is there anything else you need to tell us or want to tell us? Or
I don't think so.
anything you need from us in addition to what? Okay.
No, we're good.
Thank you.
Any comments or anything from the board you'd like to vent about?
Well, since you're still here, I'll bring you your chicken, but I won't bring all 36 pieces.
I
I'll
would
take some home.
Please take a lot home for your family, and especially because the grocery stores are pretty bare in the meat department, so.
Well, no, because I had already ordered chicken for tonight for
Yes,
all the
and
workers.
Oh.
again, ladies, we appreciate any ordering and food that was to come, and we're sorry.
No, like I
Well,
said,
okay.
Someday we're
What kind
gonna
of
take you
chicken?
guys, you and the staff to dinner or lunch again someday.
Well, we have a place that we'd like to take you, but we have to wait till.
Wow.
Well, it's gotta be open first,
Till, I
so.
don't know.
well, they do still do carry out, so we can
Yeah,
do
they
that.
do.
We could do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it's not so
Not that this is on, but what kind of chicken?
I just got fried chicken from Giant Eagle.
Okay.
Oh, God, maybe it was Barberton chicken or something, it was like.
I was struggling to get somebody to bring it here while I was sitting in the tent outside.
Ah,
I couldn't go too far beyond Ravenna.
that's true,
Yeah,
that's true.
okay. Right, well,
Now, are we gonna have to do that on June 2nd?
yeah.
Who
We
knows?
have
Who
no
knows?
idea
Well, you
at
have
this
to
point.
3 months off.
Well, I just thought maybe somebody had a cohesive plan, but apparently
What
not.
plan?
I mean, we could just do mail order and be done with it, in my opinion, but, I'm not in charge. I'm not the legislature.
Yeah, I don't understand why they don't just do
I
that
don't
at
know.
this stage.
And then
Just
maybe the
say,
pandemic could be, so contained by then, so a lot of things
Yeah, we
could, something
want
could
it.
change. Anyway, I'll make a motion to adjourn,
I will second that.
but we're gonna go out and
9/11.
9/11.
say something.
Yes, let's go ahead and give them a
ladies.
round of
You want a roll
applause,
call
shall
for
we?
that, Terry?
I'd love to do that because.
You want a
No.
roll call?
No,
To adjourn?
no, I got mine, no, I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, ladies, for your due diligence in this crazy, crazy time.
Yes, ladies, you're remarkable. Because I would have been, you could have heard me screaming from miles away after about 11 o'clock last night.
You waited that long?
Oh,
I was winding long before 11
Yes.
o'clock.
You were out, no, I was still getting calls from Sabrina and,
I was out putting signs out at 3 o'clock when I first heard
yeah.
the ruckus. And it was
And,
like, okay, I'm just gonna stop,
voter
Well, I-
location
pray, and
manager.
take a deep breath.
I had
and then
heard
headed out.
earlier on that he was going to have a press release or something, or he's going to address the problem at 2 o'clock, and then it never happened. And then it was like, okay,
Well,
what
wasn't it
happened?
like 3 or 3:30 or something when the first thing came out?
Yeah, so it was like 3:30,
Then
4
an
o'clock when
updated
the
date,
first thing came
and
out.
then another one, 11 something, and then another one at 1:30.
Yeah, but
Well, we'll see what happens today.
Yeah.
for tomorrow.
March 17th is already here.
It's cause you know it's not done.
Oh, they're gonna.
Oh,
What they're
no,
gonna do.
No.